Hello, it's Andy, and this is the video for the intro of Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. Okay, so this riff is by Neil Schon, and I've always loved his playing, and his riffs have even survived past the 80s, so that's something to say right there. Okay, here we go. So we're going to start with the low E, and this riff is in the key of E. It's in the key of E major. So if you've played an E major scale, you're going to have a tremendous advantage to learning this riff. Okay, but let's get right on with the riff. Here we go. You're going to start with the low E, and you're going to hold it for 2 counts. 1, 2. Then you're going to strike low E again. So you're going to play 2nd fret, which is F sharp. You're going to play 4th fret, which is G sharp, and you're going to move on to the next string. You're going to play 2nd fret on the A string. That's the note B. Okay, so far we have this: E, F sharp, G sharp, B. That's the first measure right there. Okay, hold out your B for 2 counts. Let's learn the next measure. Next measure starts on B again. Plays 4th fret, which is a C sharp. Then slide up, play the 6th fret, which is a D sharp. Then return to the 4th fret, that's a C sharp again. Okay, so the second measure sounds like this. There it is. Hold that for 2 counts. Now let's move on to the third measure. Third measure starts on C sharp, which is the note you're holding. Moves up to D sharp on the 6th fret. Then move up to E, which is on the 7th fret. And then strike an open A. Alright, so the third measure altogether sounds like this. Hold that for 2 counts. Moving on, time to play the 4th measure. Okay, so you strike open A again, that's the note you're holding. Then play D sharp again on the 6th fret. Play an E on the 7th fret. And then finally you strike your low E, which is the last note of the riff, or you could consider that the first note of the riff because it's time to start over. So that's it. You just learned all 4 measures. Okay, now notice this. Every note that you hold is the note that you start the next measure on. So I'm going to point that pattern out. When you play the first measure, you end up on a B. And then what's the next measure? It starts on B. You end up holding out a C sharp. And now after a 2 count hold, what's the next note? C sharp again. Then you end up playing an open A right there. You end up holding out an open A right there. And what's the next note? Open A again. And there you go. You're back to the low E. So there's a lot of repetition of notes in this riff. Okay, here we go. We're going to practice the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay, you got the first half. All right, let's move on to the second half. In the second half, there are some subtle changes. In the first measure, you're not going to do anything different yet. Okay, but in the second measure, you're going to play the B on the 2nd fret. You're going to play the C sharp on the 4th fret. You're going to play the D sharp on the 6th fret, but then surprise, you're going to play 4th fret on the low string, which is the note G sharp. So we're going someplace different in the second measure. We're changing the last note of the second measure. In the third measure, we're going to play the note G sharp on the 4th fret 3 times, followed by an open A. Okay, there you go. Now the 4th measure is the same that we studied before. Open A, 6th fret on D sharp, 7th fret on E, strike the low E. Okay, so nothing was different in the 4th measure. Only the 2nd measure and the 3rd measure were different. All right, we better cover the second half again and go through it all. So here we go. Second half starts with E, 2nd fret, 4th fret, 2nd fret on the A string. There's your first phrase. Next phrase, start on the 2nd fret, play the 4th fret, slide up to the 6th fret. Here's the surprise note, 4th fret on the low string. It's a G sharp. Hold it for 2 counts. Next phrase, play that G sharp 3 times, followed by open A. Okay, now finish up the riff by playing the last measure. You already know this one. Open A, 6th fret, 7th fret, low E. Okay, now that you know both halves, let's put both halves together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it was. Okay, now the next thing I'd like to point out is this. I am muting all the strings I'm not playing on the guitar. And I'm mostly doing that with my right hand. So I'm holding my pick like this, and then I've got 3 fingers that aren't very useful for playing the notes, but they sure are useful for muting extra strings. So I'm going to take the 3 fingers that I'm not using of my picking hand, and I'm going to lay them down on the strings that aren't being played in the song. And I'm going to explain that in detail. Let's get a close-up. Alright, this is what I'm doing. I'm playing my middle finger like this, touching the 4th string, just like that. Then I'm taking my ring finger and I'm touching the 3rd string, just like this. Then I'm taking my pinky finger and I'm touching the 2nd string, just like this. Now, I'm not pressing down, I'm just gently touching. Then I'm taking my hand and I'm sort of leaning it toward the floor like this, and that makes the side of my pinky finger touch the E string as well. There, so now I've got 4 strings that can't possibly ring out. String 1, totally dead. String 2, totally dead. String 3, can't ring. String 4, totally dead. The only strings that can possibly make music are string 6 and string 5. There we go. So I'll never get any unwanted strings ringing out when I play the riff. There it is. I'm also muting some strings with my left hand, which is the fretting hand. First, I'm going to begin the tune with my finger just gently resting across 5 of the strings like this. And so since my finger is there, the first string, it can't possibly ring. Second string, it's totally dead. third string, totally dead. Fourth string, can't ring. Fifth string, totally dead. Okay, so I can be sloppy with my picking. I'm aiming for the low E, but even if I hit some other strings too, all I'll get is the low E. Okay, that's convenient because then my next note is right here on the 2nd fret. I've still got my finger resting across those extra strings to mute them out. In fact, I'm going to leave that finger there when I move on to the next note as well. Even when I play 4th fret on the low string, I've still got this finger muting out all the unwanted strings. Good thing I left it there because the next note in the tune is on the 2nd fret. Hey, I was there already. Okay, I'm going to do all of that in a row. Here it goes. Okay. I'm still going to keep that finger across all the strings. Even now, it's still there. Even during the slide, I'll leave it across all the strings. And I'm coming right back to it. Okay, now check this out. It's time to play open A. I better take my fingers away, right? I didn't take them all away. I kept my first finger across 4 strings because I don't want those strings to ring out. I do want the open A, however, so I have to make sure I don't cover open A. And now I'm going to leave that there while I play the rest of the notes. Okay, now the next note in the tune's low E, and so I think you know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to leave my fingers touching the strings very gently, and so I can strike low E, and none of the other strings will ring.